Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Michigan Nature Bites. And hey, check out this new studio setup. We're really excited. We're making some progress, really making it feel super polished in here. But I know we've taken a 2-week break, so welcome back. And we are very excited for you all to be joining us again. So if you are new to Michigan Nature Bites, or in case you've got some short-term memory and you don't remember who I am, also cut my hair. It's a little bit shorter now. Hey, my name is Evan. I'm the Wildlife Education Coordinator here at the Howell Nature Center and host of our web series, Michigan Nature Bites, where we get the opportunity to take tiny little tasty morsels of Michigan nature knowledge to feed our brains. So today we are talking about one of my favorite topics because I love comic books. Little known fact, I was a closet comic book fanatic all through middle school and high school, but was way too embarrassed to talk about it, and then nerd became cool. So when I found out that we had a program here at the Howell Nature Center called Wild Superpowers, I was very, very excited. So if this is the kind of program that you enjoy, keep in mind, we have full-length programs of these types as well. So welcome to the Howell Nature Center. We are Michigan's largest wildlife rehabilitation clinic. We have been in business for over 39 years. Had to do some math in my head real fast. And we see over 4,200 animals in a year. So what that means is that the animals that we're going to meet today are not our rehab patients. They're not animals that are in need of help. Those are our animals that can still be released back out into the wild. The 2 animal ambassadors that I have with me today are permanent residents because they have some sort of mental or physical injury that prevent them from being released into the wild. So, because these are bites and not home meals, we are going to go ahead and get started. Now remember, this is Facebook Live, so as we are doing this program, you are more than welcome to ask questions or make comments. And Ryan, my man behind the camera, is going to be available to tell me those questions as well. So as I walk back onto the screen, I would like to introduce to you Horus, the American Kestrel. And because he's a bit of a tiny fellow, I am going to walk him a little bit closer to the camera. So this is Horus. And American kestrels are in our own backyards. And you might not realize that they are because they kind of look like something like a robin or a dove that you might just see sitting on a fence post. But these are not your average robin. As a matter of fact, they are not part of the songbird family at all. Horus is the smallest falcon in North America. Well, maybe not him personally, but kestrels are the smallest falcons in North America. And because they are so small and are still a bird of prey, meaning they still have to catch and eat their own food, he has to have some special powers that help him to be an effective hunter. And first of all, we're going to take a look at those talons that are on there. So these talons right here are his main weapon when it comes to catching and eating food. Now, that's a common thing for all birds of prey, so we're not really going to call that a superpower per se. But if we travel up and take a look at this beak, and we're going to see if we can get the camera to focus on that beak and get him to turn sideways. Maybe. All right, so we might be able to see, but if you take a look at his beak, it's going to curve like this and then curve again, and there's going to be a little bit of a tooth-looking thing right there. That is actually called a toenail tooth. It's not an actual tooth, it's just a part of his beak, but that tooth, as we're going to call it, is part of how he make sure that a tiny little bird that doesn't weigh much more than a fun-sized bag of Skittles is able to take out larger prey items that are sometimes even as big as he is. That's because that little tooth right there helps to sink right into the spine of an animal, killing it instantly. And why that's important is that these animals are what we call avivores, meaning they like to eat other birds. And they're really quick and really agile, kind of like the Flash. And as a matter of fact, their bigger cousins, the peregrine falcon, are the fastest animal in the world, being able to fly at over 200 miles an hour. And so for Horus to be able to fly through the air, grab a bird out of the sky, and kill it quickly is really important because sometimes if they can't kill it right away, it'll fight back, and that could be really damaging for the kestrel. So they developed this particular skill set, this particular adaptation or thing that helps them survive better to make them better predators, make them better killers. So maybe Horus is a little on the super villain side of things, not the superhero side of things. But his adaptations and his superpowers don't stop there, because if we travel from his beak to his eyes, and we take a look at those eyes, he has these stripes underneath his eyes. And believe it or not, those are the equivalent of bird sunglasses. Kind of silly, right? Because when's the last time you saw a bird in sunglasses? But those black stripes act the same way that eye black do on football players, and it helps to prevent the glare of the sun from affecting their vision, because a falcon, or a kestrel in this case, uses their vision to find their food. And how they do that is when they are way up in the sky, they are able to see a mouse from over a mile away. So if they're a mile up in the sky, they can see something skittering around on the ground. Now that's impressive, but to put it in human perspective, here's what that would mean. If you were sitting at one end of a football field, again, we're talking about eye black on football players, let's continue the analogy. So if you were sitting on one end of a football field and somebody was holding up a book, normal novel-sized print text on the other end of a football field, without any sort of assistance, you would be able to read every single word of that book. That's incredible. So when we call Hawkeye the archery-based superhero from Marvel Universe, like that name is pretty accurate. Being able to see and pinpoint things from a really far distance away is a superpower, and Horus has that superpower. Now, in addition to having really sharp eyesight, they can also see things that we can't. I know, right? Kind of weird. What does that mean? Well, we can see our standard sets of colors, our red, orange, green, blue, yellow, indigo, violet, your whole Roy-G Biv. But kestrels have the ability to see in ultraviolet, meaning that there's a whole spectrum of colors that they can see that we can't. Now, we can kind of get a glimpse into this world when we use things like a black light. We can use a black light to illuminate things like substances. So things like blood and urine highlight underneath a black light. So if you think about it, and Horus is a predator, and a lot of the things that he might eat are things that are scurrying along the ground. So sometimes he's going to catch things like mice. And if he can see in the UV spectrum and the things on the ground like mouse pee stand out to him, they've basically left him a highway right to their door that he can follow and wait outside patiently for them to come back out and then snatch them up with those talons that we met at the very beginning at the presentation. So all of those combine together to make an incredibly superpowered bird. But do we have any questions about additional facts that we might want to know about Horus? Now, he is a mal-imprinted bird, so he thinks he is a person. He is very, very comfortable in front of people. As we can see here, he's pretty relaxed, things like that, because he was raised in people's homes, so he thinks he is a person. And for a tiny little bird like this, that can be really dangerous for them out in the wild. They don't know how to survive and keep themselves safe. So, fire away with questions that you have for me or Horus about this nature bite.
But someone was here today and didn't see this little guy.
So if you came to visit us right now, this very instant, as somebody just said that they were here, thank you for visiting, by the way. We are very excited you came out to see us. It is still a little chilly for our tiny falcon friend because right about this time of year, they have flown south. And while it is starting to warm up for us, and it feels significantly warmer than it's been, it's still a little too cold for him. So he has a nice indoor habitat that keeps him fully toasty and able to survive our cold Michigan winters. So he'll probably start going back out once temperatures are consistently above 50 degrees.
Does Horus have a favorite food?
Horus absolutely has a favorite food, and they are a food that we don't get to feed him very often because it's kind of a specialty food, but it is things like moths and butterflies. So anytime a moth or a butterfly gets into his habitat and he has the opportunity to go after it, because he's fully flighted, he really enjoys chasing them down and grabbing a hold of them.
Do kestrels migrate?
Kestrels do migrate. So kestrels do need to travel south for the winter. If we take a look at him, he's not a very big bird, nor does he have any sort of protection on these toes and things like that here. So he's got to get somewhere warmer, or else he's not going to be able to survive our harsh winters.
Wesley, 6-year-old, wants to know who's faster, him or an owl?
Well, Wesley, I'm going to go ahead and say that Horus is without a doubt faster than most of our owls. While something like a great horned owl is really powerful and can fly at somewhere around 40 miles an hour, kestrels can fly at about 55 miles an hour, which is faster than most of our owls, who aren't really designed for speed. They're designed for stealth. They're very quiet animals. All right, so we are going to keep moving, because remember, these are bites, not full meals. So I'm going to put Horus back, and we are going to meet our next superpowered animal, and his name is Helios. Now, before you make any judgments about our other superheroed friend, just hold off. We're going to learn some more about him today that might change your opinion. So this might look like a strange way to carry an animal, and that's because the weather outside right now is not conducive. It's not good for our next friend. So I have a nice little heat pad in here for Helios, the ball python. So this is Helios. He is a pet of one of our staff. So you can find ball pythons in pet stores. They're not something we find here in Michigan. They're an African species that you find mostly in the northern African kind of grassland areas. So this is not something you should be finding wild out in Michigan. And just like Horus, there's a strong possibility they're not going to be able to survive winters here either. So why are they called ball pythons? Well, because when they are hiding or just hanging out, they curl into these really tight balls that make them really hard to see, because their scale pattern is part of their superpower. They're able to camouflage and keep themselves really hidden, and they use that to their advantage when it comes for hunting their food. And don't worry, this is as big as Helios is gonna get. He's not coming after you, I promise. They are not going to be hunting people. They are going to actually be hunting things like mice and other pests that we don't really like living with. And if you have a garden, something like a garter snake or other smaller snake species are actually probably your best friend, as they'll be able to keep things like grubs and other insects that'll destroy your garden away. So while you won't find Helios there, you will find other snakes that serve a really important role in the environment. Now, Helios is a constrictor, so he is all muscle. Snakes are mostly abdominal muscle. The age-old question of, is a snake mostly head or is a snake mostly tail? Neither one is correct. They are mostly midsection, so they are mostly one giant ab muscle. And they're able to use that for getting around. So as you might see, he's using it to maneuver around my arm. But those muscles are also able to help him wrap around prey. So they'll lay in wait, using that incredibly well-designed camouflage of their scales to hide quietly. And then they'll use that tongue and those little pits that you see along his mouth. And I'll bring him a little bit closer to let you all see what I'm talking about. So those pits along his nose are going to help him sense heat. And that tongue is going to help him with finding basically he's tasting the air. He's trying to figure out what is supposed to be food and what's not supposed to be food. And so that really lets him wait and sit. And when something gets a little bit too close to him, he would strike out with his teeth. Now, he's not venomous, meaning he's not going to be able to inject any sort of toxin into my system. So he's relying completely on the strength of his body to kill that food. So he's pretty dang strong. And if he were upset with me, which I'm, being very gentle as I handle him, and this is the proper way to kind of hold a snake and to respect their space, but he would be able to squeeze pretty hard, and I don't think I'd be able to get him off my arm if he truly were trying to hurt me. Now, if you do find a snake in your backyard, please, unless you are 100% confident in its identification, don't pick it up, don't mess with it, just leave it where it's at. Because while these are commonly misunderstood animals, they are still potentially dangerous in that they will bite you. And we only have one venomous snake here in Michigan. It's the Massasauga Rattlesnake, but they're also wild animals, and we want to respect the fact that you're often entering their home and they're just trying to live their life, and you might have disturbed them. And if you wake me up out of a deep dream, I'm gonna maybe hit you. So just like that, we want to make sure that we're respecting these animals for the fact that they have lives too. And often we're disturbing them more than they're disturbing us. So we've learned a little bit about a couple of backyard animals, well, kind of a backyard animal, given that Helios isn't really found in our backyards, but what questions do you all have? What questions about Helios or other superpowers that you might want to know some more about?
Yeah, Gavin wants to know, how long is Helios?
Helios is about 3.5 feet long if he were fully stretched out. And like I said, he is full grown, but they don't get much bigger than this. The females will sometimes get about 4 feet, but they're still a fairly small-bodied snake. Any other questions? All right, so I'm gonna get Helios back to his home, although we'll let him come explore the camera one last time. Also, we are very proud of Ryan in the studio today. He does not like snakes, but even he has conquered his fear and is able to hang out with Helios because he knows that snakes aren't as bad as sometimes we think they are. All right, so we're gonna put Helios back, and we are gonna wrap up this week's session of Michigan Nature Bites. Now, next week, we are going to be meeting Chelsea, our wildlife park coordinator, who is going to host a session with me called Ask a Zookeeper. So if you've been wondering what it's like to work here with these animals at the Nature Center, this is the week for you all to tune in. And then we have exciting news. We are going to keep doing these Nature Bites. So Ask a Zookeeper was kind of the end of season 1, but you all have been so great, and these are in such high demand by not just you all, but by our schools and our other guests to have this free resource that we're gonna keep them going. And if you know somebody that would like to help support this that we've been doing, hey, we got some blank wall space behind us that we can throw a sponsor up, and you or your business might be able to be Michigan Nature Bites presented by your name there. All right, that's my last plug for this week. Oh wait, hold up, I just got a finger up from Ryan.
Yes, Wesley wants to know, what happens if he fights a spider?
Wesley, if Helios were to fight a spider, I would say that, if he wanted to eat it, he's probably fast enough to grab it, to strike out and grab it. But those spiders aren't really gonna be super exciting for Helios. Mostly Helios is gonna sit there and just watch it. Sorry, that's probably not the exciting brawl that you were expecting, but sometimes nature's not as violent as we think it is. All right, you all, we'll catch you all next week. See you later.